Hello, 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 and welcome back to my Ascendant through Sign series and the house system associated with that Ascendant. Yesterday we picked off on or we left off on the Sagittarius Ascendant. This time we are picking up the Capricorn Ascendant. So, what is the Ascendant as a recap? The Ascendant is the astronomical point in time that was rising on the eastern horizon when you were born. So, if you were being born and due east, where the sun comes up on the spring equinox on March 20th, the sign of Capricorn was rising at any degree, you would be considered a Capricorn ascendant of a certain degree. If you're interested in calculating this, you can go on many different websites and figure out your ascendant sign as well as all your other planets. It is freely available knowledge. What that means, you can just come here or anywhere else on YouTube to figure it out. So, Capricorn ascendant, what are these people like? So first off, these people, they have their first house, which represents ambitions, your goals, and your personal reason for being here on Earth. It corresponds to the sign of Aries. They have their first house in Capricorn. And Capricorn is the cardinal Earth sign, and it's ruled by Saturn, and it relates to delays, and it relates to delayed gratification, but it also relates to fame and work, and the work you're going to do in life, and the impact and legacy that you are going to leave. So, having your first house in Capricorn is a sort of a slow life path, in that Saturn is a planet that gives huge results. So it's not a bad planet. It will give you the status that you seek, the impact on the world that you want, and the career and goals that you want to achieve. However, it will give them to you later, but it will give them to you in abundance, having worked for it. I tend to equate Saturn to lifting weights, in that if you're lifting weights or training with resistance in anything, and then the resistance comes off at a certain point, then you're doing better than you were before you put the resistance on. But while the resistance is on, you seem cursed. So that is basically Saturn. So these people's goals get delayed until later in their life. Their second house, which is Aquarius, is also ruled by Saturn. But while Capricorn is the pure Saturn energy, Aquarius it has two co-rulers, Uranus and the north node of the moon, which I'll get into later when I go through the planets and what these planets mean. So Aquarius is a sign of science and a sign of productivity, increased productivity. So while Capricorn represents the delays and the cycles of time unaffected by human consciousness, Aquarius represents consciousness acting on that time and trying to improve the usage of time. This is why Aquarius represents tool use and scientific thinking and facts and information. So, these people's money, which always relates to the second house, and these people's clothes, and these people's material possessions tend to be tools. They tend to like having tools, and they tend to like having and collecting things that are useful or technological. So these people will always have computers and cell phones that are helpful, and they'll always be interested in the latest apps and that kind of thing. That's what they value, is things that help them use their time more efficiently. So these people's third house is Pisces, and Pisces is the sign of imagination and theoretical knowledge and things that are unknown that are still being observed, like things in your dreams that may or may not be true, but they are just theories that you're presenting. So these people are constantly kind of chucking out theories and interesting ideas that they find appealing, that they're curious about, that may or may not be true. So as a result, these people tend to get criticized a lot, which is part of the reason their reputation suffers, because they tend to be pretty slow with their hands and tend to be pretty slow with their speech. Not slow as in stupid, but just sort of very relaxed and sort of lazy in a way. But they are intelligent. So Their fourth house, which represents their relationship with their home and their family, as well as the home and the family that they'll grow into, is Aries. So they tend to have a very organized house, and they tend to be a little bit aggressive in their house, and they also tend to live with brothers in their like sort of adolescence. They tend to move in with like brothers or male roommate figures typically, who sort of guide them and support them until they can achieve things on their own. These people's fifth house is Taurus. So fifth house is the house of creativity, and Taurus is the sign of material pleasures and material judgments and the things you value. So these people do value creativity, although their creativity can be a little bit low resolution. But the quality of their creativity that they enjoy so much will be dependent on the placement of Venus. So if Venus is in a good place for creativity, like Leo, or the late end of Virgo or Pisces, these people will have creative achievements that they value. But if Venus is in a sign that is less creative, then their creativity will suffer and they will move to other areas of their life most likely. These people's sixth house, which is important to them, it represents their routine, your health, your how you judge and process information, and also how you deal with your enemies and adversaries. This is Gemini, so these people tend not to have a whole lot of adversaries in their life because they tend to be very effective at talking down people who would otherwise be annoyed at them or willing to fight them. They prefer to communicate and outthink their opponents rather than fight. So this is actually a pretty good placement because you don't tend to have a lot of enemies if you have a Capricorn Ascendant, unless you have like Mars or North Node in the sixth house, and then you will face some opposition that you will have to constantly be talking down and communicating down from trying to harm you or bother you. So these people's seventh house, their relationships, is Cancer. And because these people are hard workers, and because these people have a natural desire to provide and natural desire to do service for others, they tend to attract a person who is sort of emotionally imbalanced, but is a very good and creative person who is a caregiver for them in some ways. And because of this, they tend to also get married late, not because their seventh house is in a negative sign, but because their first house is, and the first house and seventh house always relate. So they tend to get married after the age of 30, just like Cancer Ascendant people do, and they tend to find somebody who is very caregiving, but financially is not as inclined as they are, typically speaking. Now, the nature of their relationship is heavily dependent upon the place of the moon, and you should look at the nakshatra that the moon is in, and I haven't made videos on nakshatras yet, but I will. But you can check out KRS channel for nakshatras. He has a very good series on that, because the moon's energy it changes every day into a new nakshatra, so you can definitely check that out on KRS's channel until I make videos on it. These people's eighth house is Leo. So eighth house deals with research, and these people tend to be very interested in their research, but it's kind of superficial because Leo is not necessarily a super deep sign. So these people can do a lot of shallow research, and they're constantly throwing out creative ideas, and they're very interested in learning deep knowledge and new knowledge. However, they have a hard time going deep because their third house Pisces, their intelligence, it sort of floats on the surface and it never dives super deep. Now, if their sun is in Scorpio or something, then yes, you will see a hard-working researcher here. But in general, these people will not be incredibly deep in their knowledge search, but they will be very inspired by it, which is good. Also, these people's egos tend to be hidden from them in that they tend to have a lot of anxiety, and this can also be seen through the eighth house lord being the sun, ruling Leo. So these people's ninth house, which is their education, is very well placed because it's in the sign of Virgo, and Virgo is a very analytical and logical sign. However, this can lead to them questioning teachers, and depending on the placement of their Jupiter and Mercury, their teacher might not like the way they question them, so they might drive teachers away by incessant questioning. But if Mercury and Jupiter are both well placed, then this person will attract a lot of good teachers who will teach them the things that they need to progress with this difficult and delayed life path. Their 10th house is Libra, and this also relates to their relationship delay. However, the 10th house in Libra, since Saturn rules the 10th house and Saturn is exalted in Libra, these people do become very good salespeople and negotiators, and they can tend to make a killing in sales, especially because their second house, Aquarius, makes them very interested in technology. So if these people are to sell and fix electronics, for example, they can do very well at that, especially if Saturn is well placed in a sign that is favored to it, like an air or earth sign, or it's in Libra itself. These people can make killer marketers, killer negotiators, but they do tend to have delayed relationships in their life. And that's also partially because their 7-1 axis, their 7th house, 1st house axis, if you draw the chart, these things are opposed, and it represents you and your relationships, your one-on-one intimate relationships. These people have it on the Capricorn Cancer axis, which gets its success later in life typically. So these people's 11th house is very good because it's Scorpio. So these people, because they're so hardworking, they have a gain of deep information in their life that they get through time, not necessarily through intelligence. Although if they are intelligent, that obviously helps. So the more they research and the more they know, the more they can use that information to gain in both reputation and materially, and in their network circles and communication circles. So this is actually a very good placement, although they also tend to have a lot of ups and downs in their financial life that they have to balance out, because Scorpio, although it is a sign of wealth and a sign of investments, it's also a sign of tumultuous ups and downs and deep research, uncomfortable knowledge. So their gains are uncomfortable and they're hard won, but they are still gains, basically. Like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger is a good representation of this, or a good saying to understand this. And finally, these people's 12th house is also well placed. It's Sagittarius. So these people firstly tend to have a very visual imagination, because Sagittarius, among other things, it's your education, but it's also your vision. And and the 12th house is your imagination capacities and your ability to theorize and dream. So Sagittarius, being related to vision and education, tends to be very good here. These people tend to have very clear visual imaginations, very stable imaginations, especially if Jupiter is well placed in a sign, like a water sign, like Pisces, Scorpio, or Cancer. Especially Cancer, these people would have very clear imaginations, which is very good. Also, these people tend to gain by traveling to foreign lands and by traveling to like places that are not their home, or by being in isolation. These people can gain there and especially gain information that they didn't know before. They can find teachers in places that are isolated, and like on camping trips, on hiking expeditions, on basically just places that they are in solitude or out of their element. They can learn a lot there. So that is actually a good 12th house to have, even though it can also be kind of uncomfortable. So basically the end result for Capricorn Ascendant is a hard life, but typically most Capricorn Ascendants do prosper, but they prosper typically after the age of 30, and up until that age it is quite difficult for them, both personally and materially. So if you are a Capricorn Ascendant and your life feels cursed, it's not. It's just on hold. The best way that I've found to explain the process of Saturn, aside from the weightlifting analogy, is you order something off the internet and then it takes a while to get to you. It's still coming. It's just the things that you ordered by your Saturn placement at the beginning of your life, they're coming to you around the age of 30, or in your 30s at least. But Saturn does lift that limitation at 30 or 29 in some months. And when you do get that limitation lifted, it's like basically you were training with weights your whole life and you didn't even know it, and now you're super strong because you were training with weights. So these people do tend to prosper later in their life. All right, that was my analysis of Capricorn Ascendant. The next video I'm going to make is the Aquarius Ascendant, so tune in for that.